Season 3, Episode 1, Haikaa Yamamoto.
This is the Actual Fluency Podcast, helping you become a better language learner by providing motivating weekly inspiration, as well as top tips and tricks from expert guests. And now, your host, Chris Broholm.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Actual Fluency Podcast. This is the premiere of the third season, the very first episode, and I'm so excited to have you here. Today is a very special time because it's taken me a long time to get back with a new season, but trust me when I say I've been working hard behind the scenes to make it a lot better, to make it a lot more enjoyable experience for you guys out there. And in a few minutes, we're going to hear the interview, or I don't even know if I should call my podcast an interview podcast, but it's definitely me asking questions. But I also get asked questions by my guests a lot, so I think it's more of a conversation actually. So you're going to hear my conversation with Haikaa Yamamoto, who you may have seen from such songs as Work of Art, which is a favorite of mine, or you might have seen her in the Benny Lewis Skype Me Maybe video, which is a hilarious video that I must have seen a million times. It's just great, and over the time I've gotten to know almost anyone in the video, and it's pretty cool. But before we get into that, let me just do a few admin stuff, a few messages here, public service. The first message I want to tell you about is that the podcast is now video as well. This doesn't impact you if you like to listen to the podcast on your phone or whatever, on whatever device you use for podcasting, whether you're out running or in your car, whatever. So that will stay as it was before. The video part is going to be on YouTube, on the Actual Fluency channel. So I encourage you to subscribe there if you like video content. And the benefit of video content for people who go there is that you will get to see some of the behind the scenes stuff. For the audio part, obviously the interview is cut and it's edited. It's not edited inside the conversation, but I always have a little talk before and after with the guests, and I thought that would be interesting to show people on YouTube, and also it's easier for me not to edit. So if you go on the YouTube channel Actual Fluency, you can find these episodes in their full unedited length, which usually includes quite a substantial amount of behind the scenes material. So if you're interested in that stuff, go to the YouTube channel and enjoy that. And the audio is going to continue just as before. This episode is a little bit longer because it's the first episode, so I got carried away a little bit. But it's a very nice conversation with Haikaa. And before we get into that, there's also just one small thing I wanted to tell you about. I'm getting a fair amount of questions on email, random questions about anything really, like what do I do for a living, how do I learn French, how's it like to live in Budapest, I get tons of questions, and I answer all of them to the best of my ability. Sometimes I might miss some, but what I wanted to offer you was send me a question, and I'll do a YouTube video about them. So send me any question. You can go to actualfluency.com/contact, or you can see the big contact menu item on the front page, and just send me any question you'd like me to answer, and I'll make a special video and maybe even include the audio as well. So there'll be more than one piece of content a week. And this is basically, I'm not a language learning expert by any means. I've interviewed over 70 very successful language learners, so I obviously have a lot of theoretical knowledge, but as you probably know from the blog, I consider myself quite a poor student, quite a terrible student. So it's not that I want to, try to spread my gospel of how amazing I am in language learning. It's simply an offer for you to get any sort of question answered that you might have. It could be about languages, it could be about Denmark, it could be about learning languages, it could be about how to learn when you're not feeling totally okay, sort of like a depression state. We'll get into that a little bit in this interview. Or it could be anything, really. It doesn't even have to do with languages. I'd be happy to answer any question you have. And I might make, a separate YouTube video for every question, or I might split several small ones into a big one. And on that note, if you really do want some language learning advice from an expert, I advise you to go to Ollie's blog, Ollie Richards, which is iwillteachyoualanguage.com, he's got a podcast where he answers people's questions. And Ollie has learned 7 or 8 languages. I don't know who counts anymore, but he's a very talented language learner. And I'm sure if you have any very technical language learning questions, he would be the one. He would be perfect to answer them for you. But of course, I'm happy to offer my wisdom. If not obtained by proxy, then at least the experience of being a terrible student is also always quite unique. So thank you so much. And to everyone who wrote in and asking what was going on with the podcast, I'm so grateful that you supported it, and sorry for the extra delay. It has been a long time since the second season ended, an unreasonably long time, and this won't happen again. I promise. Now we're back on track, and I got some amazing guests lined up for you for this season. I mean, how about Tim Donor? You've been asking for Tim since the very first week of the podcast, and now we're finally going to get him on the show to pick his brain about how it is to be Mr. Tim Donor, who I'm sure you've all heard about. And apart from Tim, I've got a lineup of amazing guests, and I hope we can get them on, like the director behind the movie Hyper Polyglot, Mr. Michael Harris, who's I think is a very interesting perspective to get. But before I ramble on about tons of exciting guests, I think it's time to move into the segment of the conversation today with Haikaa Yamamoto. And today is a little special. It's not so much about learning languages. It's about finding balance with yourself, how to connect to your real self, and how to honor yourself. And I think that's a very important part of being a language learner, and it kind of goes hand in hand. But we get into all that stuff in just a minute. Thank you so much, and a special thank you to the people in New York who came up and said, I'm a fan of your podcast. I listen to it all the time. That means the world to me, and it's part of the reason that I'm doing this every week. I'm pumped, and I think of you guys. So thank you so much, and enjoy the new season. All right, everyone, we're back with another episode of the Actual Fluency Podcast, and another season indeed. And on today's season or episode, I've got the amazing Haikaa Yamamoto. And I'm going to say Haikaa has been so amazing to actually send along a bio, because I ask everyone on the show to write a little bit about yourself, and everyone is just like blogger, podcaster, or I make videos. And I'm like, okay, that's useful. But Haikaa actually sent a really nice bio, so I'm going to use that. Bear with me for reading it out loud. Honor yourself, honor others, honor the planet. Haikaa radiates these messages and more through her music and writing. The multicultural pop singer, songwriter, and author hails from Brazil, Japan, and the US. Haikaa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi, Chris. It's nice to be here.
Fantastic. And of course, I first heard of you back in the day when you made the Skype Me Maybe video, or you had an active role in it. I remember, who was that singing that, the long, you held the notes for a long time. I was like, that doesn't sound like a random polyglot, so I looked you up and I was like, that's really cool that you have time to come by the podcast.
It was great participating in that, because to me it's always been like language and music. So to be able to participate in Skype Me Maybe actually put me in contact with a lot of cool folks around the world like you. So thanks again to Benny Lewis for including me in that, and I had some fun singing in Rajasthani. Yeah,
there you go. That's language people have never heard of before, was first presented in that video, which was amazing. But before we get into the language part, I just wanted people to get to know you a little better if they haven't heard about you before. So what's your story? What's your background? How did you become this world-loving and traveling into languages, music, and how did you get to where you are today?
Okay. I'll try to be brief because I like to talk. Okay, so I'm a Japanese descendant, right? My parents are Japanese, but I was born in Brazil. So that's 2 languages there already, because my mother spoke to us from a very young age in Japanese. Afterwards, I think when I was around 12 years old, I started studying in an American school while still I was in Brazil. So that was my 3rd language right there. And after that, I went to the US and I lived in Japan. So I really always had a very good opportunity to be in contact with many languages. Having said that, I think it's also something that I have always loved. I remember ever since I was a very, very little child, not being very shy. Every time I saw somebody speaking a language I didn't know, I'd be like, excuse me, what language are you speaking? and how do you say hello? And like, I was that kind of kid. So it's always something that I have been very, very attracted towards. So both things, I think, music and language sort of define who I am. With regards to the music, I think that I actually think it has to do with the language as well, because my mother, being Japanese, she still doesn't speak Portuguese very well. And of course, Portuguese is technically my mother tongue. She sang a lot to us. So to me, I think there was that emotional bond with music to know that, because I think that was the main way in which she expressed her affection. She wasn't a very I was born in Brazil with Italian neighbors who hugged me and kissed me and slapped me. And my mother was not like that at all. She wasn't very, she didn't really hold me or touch me or anything like that. But her affection was expressed through music. So I don't know, being a psychologist here, I think that also has to do with how I became involved with music. And then, so always loving music. And then when I was in high school in Japan, I released an album. I was always in bands and choirs and things like that. And I released an album through Sony Japan as a part of a girls club, with the same outfits and the choreography and stuff like that. And that's when I sort of realized this is what I want to do forever, but not with somebody telling me exactly how I have to express and what I have to express, but I have to find my identity and sort of discover what is it that I want to express, because I know there's something that I want to express. I don't know exactly what it is, but I have to figure it out. And so I went on to this independent path of being a singer-songwriter, and in this process of figuring out the sound of my voice and what kind of music I wanted to make, it became very clear to me that my biggest treasure that I wanted to communicate, that I thought was worth sharing with people, were all related to, self-love and being able to respect other people. And I think as a consequence, you respect our home that we all share. So that's where, honor yourself in the first place, and then honor others because they are your equals. And then let's take care of our planet, because, it is ours. There are political frontiers, but those frontiers don't really exist for the planet. So that's sort of how my work developed.
Amazing. And one of the things is I follow you on Facebook, and you put out updates quite often, and every time I see them I get a little bit more hopeful in humanity. It seems like we're so corrupted, but at the same time it seems like we're also starting to realize that, and it seems like the things that you're doing, like spreading the awareness of the planet, like something like the environmental changes that are happening, something like the socioeconomic as well. It seems like we're going in a positive direction, but then again, not. What do you think? We're in 2015 now. What do you think the current state of, the honor the planet is?
I think we have to believe in it. I think there's something that I always kind of say in the music world, like the serious artists. There's this idea that you have to be dark to be deep. If you're not dark, you're not deep. And I don't believe in that. I think that we have to believe that you have to see the light, and I really, of course, I'm aware of the world that we live in, of the terrible corruption and inequalities and disrespect for the planet, for, human beings, and etc. The list could go on and on. But I really believe that there are more and more people who want to make a difference. And I think making a difference is not big. It's I'm going to do my tiny little bit, because I'm really into making my own beauty products. I stopped, buying moisturizers and things like that, and it's a tiny thing, but I think that there's if you look it up, there's a whole community of people who are starting to perceive life in a different way. So I think that it's something that is possible. It is possible, and we're, as you said, we're at a bit of a turning point. I think that if we don't change, we're going to disappear from the planet because we're gonna pollute all the water. What's next? I live in Brazil, between Brazil and the United States, in California. Both countries had huge water problems. In the States this year, drought. You have you had to limit incredibly the amount of water consumption, and in Brazil, which is a tropical country, you had that too. So I think that we have to change, otherwise, we're just going to disappear from the planet, which is not a bad thing for the planet, I'm sure.
that's a very philosophical question for sure. And everything you just talked about, I suppose that does start with the honor yourself, right? Because how can you help others if you haven't really helped yourself yet, right?
Absolutely. I actually think they come simultaneously. I think that the more you're able to help other people, the more you help yourself. I think that's true, because I think we never, in my opinion, we don't really develop self-esteem from just inside. I think we are social beings. We need that sort of feedback from the people around us. So I think that we kind of do things simultaneously. You try to help somebody, and because you were of some help to that person, it makes you feel a little bit better about yourself, and because of that, you're able to extend that. So again, I think it's a positive cycle. But I think honoring yourself, a lot of my music is about this ability to accept who we are, is definitely at the core of this process, because I think that when we're trying to be another person, then it's not going to work.
Right.
And I think when you're an artist, it's very evident. Because it's when you sing, if you're imitating another person, it's so obvious. Or if you're not feeling what you're singing, the lack of honesty becomes very obvious. So it's a privilege in that sense, because you're confronted with that reality of, I'm kind of being fake. I'm not really being myself. But it's something that applies to every area of your life, and of course, it benefits every person in every corner of the world to be able to say, look, this is who I am. I have good things, I have bad things. I have to look at all of them at the same time, because the bad things are just a part of myself as the good things, and try to live with it.
Yeah. The one of the more interesting things is the idea of the uniqueness, right? That we are all unique. There's nobody else. That's one of the lyrics from your song, Work of Art. But there's nobody like the I. You are literally unique, and I think we live in a time where education and even society is kind of forcing everyone to be very similar, right? They're trying to impose these kind of, you should think like this, you should do this, you should get a job, then you should do this, and that's really restricting the personal qualities, isn't it?
Yeah, I broke all the rules. I broke all the expectations in the traditional sense. The way that I carried on my life professionally, my educational career, my personal life, with the family structure that I have. Everything in my life is sort of not what status quo would say is correct. So I suffered a lot of prejudice from a very young age, a lot of heavy sort of prejudice of people who were disappointed in me, and I think it's hard to figure it out. But I think that, like I said to you, when it's truthful, you somehow find the strength to move on. And I think that's what's important, that you're able to take one step at a time. When I look back at my life, I think, oh my God, I managed to break all the rules, practically. But I wasn't doing it to defy society. I was just doing it because it's what I felt I needed to do, and I think that, as you said, I think especially with consumer society, with, companies developing a world market where the entire world wants exactly the same product, we do have this sort of standardization of personality and of expectations of what you're supposed to live, how you're supposed to live. And I think that, there's nobody like you. It's important because really there is nobody exactly like you who had the exact same influences and story. And there's something uniquely beautiful about that story that only you can live. So again, going back to honoring yourself, one thing that I always like to say is, we can't ask people for permission to be who we are. If they like us, I mean, without attacking, without offending or anybody specifically, but I think that to have this ability to really feel what is it that I want to do with my life, and if you want to think something bad about me, that's too bad. I never like it when people think something bad about me, but it's like I can't I can't enter you and change your mind about me, and I'm gonna pursue this path of honoring myself in every way possible. So it's a life long thing, I think.
Yeah, and it has to be said as well that, there's nothing wrong with, taking it the normal path. I mean, for some people, that's perfect. They want the stability. Maybe they dreamt of being a lawyer. There are lots of different reasons to do what we do. It's not that everyone needs to break out and become, I don't know, dancers or singers or, figure skaters. If
Absolutely,
that's what their dream
yes,
is.
Absolutely not. I think it's the only important thing is truth. Going back to like what you said is like, if people want to pursue a career, have a traditional marriage, have a wedding party, and the kids by the age of 30, whatever, it's fine as long as you're living your life from your own truth. One of the things that I like to point out as an artist is, people, one thing is to be unique. A very different thing is to try to be different. Because when you're trying to be different, you're still looking at other people, and to be unique is just to be able to breathe who you are. And, this is who I am. Maybe it's too girly for you. Maybe it's too delicate for you. Maybe it's too whatever, but this is who I am. And this is my unique combination of what I feel that I can bring to the world through music or,
the whole message, and this connects quite a lot to language learning, I would say as well. The people who take a really active interest in learning foreign languages for the sake of communicating with other people. I mean, that brings us all closer together, right? So that's a good connection with the honor others, right?
Absolutely, because I think that most people who are interested in languages are also interested in cultures and just sort of opening up their minds. And even, when we talk about pronunciation, this is an area that I'm particularly interested in as a singer, right? The way the tongue moves, the way the lips move, everything is outside your comfort zone. It's like, and so physically it's challenging. Culturally it's challenging because you're getting in touch. A language exists within a cultural context. Of course, if you want to learn it, you have to get in touch with it. So this is one of the main reasons why I'm so attracted to the polyglot community, because as you said, languages really are a doorway to exploring and sort of opening our minds up to other possibilities.
Right. I totally agree. And the pronunciation, as a singer, I previously talked to an opera singer, actually, Gabriel Weiner, and we talked about this before as well. Just that's funny to think about the technical side, that you can actually be, when you're a singer, you're actually a professional pronunciationer. I don't know. You're actually, when you have to sing in other languages, it's a funny element. And I guess this brings us on to the song I mentioned just before, Work of Art, which I guess is a bit more than a song. It's more like would you call it a project or a phenomenon? It's definitely more than a song.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. That was a project.
Yeah, well, tell us about it for those people who haven't stumbled upon it yet. How did you start doing it, and what was the idea behind it?
I prepared a special version for you, actually, singing a little bit in Danish.
Oh, did you?
I did.
All right. I'd love to
Which we can. Can you hear the piano?
Yes, it's fun.
Okay, so I can. I was like, no, I got to sing in Danish to Chris. So
speaking of pronunciation problems, right?
Yeah. I'm like, oops, but you'll get to hear me. So Work of Art is a song that I wrote with my songwriting partner, Mercury. He is my songwriting partner, my life partner. We're partners in everything, and this is a song that we wrote back in 2007, I think. And it's a song of self-acceptance. I am a work of art is the main line of the song. And it really, I think for me particularly, it came at a moment in my life where I felt very bad about who I was, and with very low self-esteem, very low level of courage. It was actually the first song that I wrote after I swore that I would never sing again. In 2006, I quit my career. I said, I'm never going to sing ever again. This path has given me so many nightmares, so many tears, so much disappointment. That's the end of it. And then in 2007, the inspiration came, and it's like, no, it's not your decision. You don't get to choose. This is not how it works. And I understood the message that, I can't run away from music. And so having that sort of meaning, I really wanted to take this important emotion out to the world. And I said, why not try to sing this song in as many languages as I can? Because symbolically, it would mean, to be able to celebrate with people from all over the world our uniqueness. And so basically, I just started looking for people, asking friends based on the concept of 6 degrees of separation. I started writing emails to friends and saying, hey, I want to do a version of the song. Do you happen to know somebody who'd be interested in writing a language? And the person would be like, okay, I'll write Mandarin. No, I'll write, I know, I have a friend who is Armenian and he's going to write the Armenian version. And so it was really mouth to mouth, because I wasn't working with a budget or anything. It wasn't like Disney, let's do Aladdin. Yeah, it wasn't, which is a great song, by the way, I think.
I love it. Yeah.
I love it. And
kind of similar, actually.
Yeah.
A little bit. There's a bit of, letting
the
go
energy,
there.
Yeah, you're right. And so I began doing it, and after about a year and a half, I had the song in 20 different versions, full-length versions, and I wanted to do a video of it. Obviously, I wasn't going to sing the whole song in 20 different languages, otherwise it would be like a 6-hour-and-a-half video. So I did just little bits in 19 different languages, and the video is called Work of Art Global Project. People can find it on YouTube. And I think it was interesting just to see how many people were intrinsically motivated to participate, because they felt that this was a message that they wanted to express. And respecting the language aspect of it, I always asked people, I said, this is the general idea of the song. Make it your own, make it belong to your language. And again, taking into consideration the cultural aspects of each of the languages. So that's how it all came together.
It's amazing. I love the song. I play it so often on YouTube that I probably account for like a percentage of the of the hits or something.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And it really hits home. I just wanted to add that fact with the Danish. And I have a funny relationship with Danish. You know, I've lived there for 25, 26 years. Was born there, as Danish as you can be, probably. But when I was a little bit older, I learned English, and I just grew so fond of English that today I actually almost consider myself a little bit more English than Danish, not because I have any English culture or anything, but with the language I feel more associated with it. So, but then when I heard the song, the Danish lyrics came on, and I was like, wow, that's really powerful to actually hear it in your native tongue, even though I'd sort of cast it away. And it really proves the whole Nelson Mandela thing, you know, the speak to a man in a language he knows and it goes to his head, and speak to a language, his language, then it goes to his heart. And it really did for me, because I really connected to particularly the Danish lyrics, which are incredible. Tough to sing. Danish pronunciation, even when speaking, is amazingly difficult. Most Danish people don't know how to do it, but you managed to do it in a way that I could understand you for sure.
Wow, a huge compliment, because I think it was totally new for me. Definitely the whole phonetics. Very, very difficult to grasp. The Danish lyricist, we call her Lærke, but she says it's Lærke.
Lærke.
Lærke. Was very, very sweet and very patient throughout the whole time, and she kept sending me, MP3s of her singing, and I'm like really trying to absorb the whole sound, and I think, all language lovers know this, but I mean, just speaking a language you've never heard before, or a new language, it's so much fun.
Right.
It's just so exciting and new and fresh and scary, and at the same time, to me, actually, I've said this many times, the Danish version was my favorite. I love the sound of the language, and it just really, really struck a chord with me there. So
yeah, me too. And another nod to again Frozen. The Danish Frozen is also one of the best, I think. And I don't often say that. I don't consider any Danish Disney song superior to the English one, but that one. The Frozen Let It Go, that one song is amazing in Danish. There are actually people learning Danish out there. I know this for a fact. So if they're interested, you listen to Work of Art in Danish and listen to the Let It Go in Danish. Those are two amazing songs.
Thank you. It was great to. It's very reassuring to get a comment like that from a native speaker. So, it's interesting you say that about your relationship with Danish, because in a way that's sort of my relationship with Portuguese as well. I feel closer to English for some reason, emotionally, even as an author, writing texts and writing lyrics, than I do in my native tongue, which is Portuguese. I don't know why that happens. But.
Yeah, it's strange. But then again, when you hear your native tongue, there's still some deep-rooted connection somewhere. There's like maybe a sentimental feeling of this is where I come from.
Yes, I think so.
All right, but did you want to play some of the Danish work of art?
I did, actually. But wait, let me see. How do we do... I wanted to send you the chat, right? We want to hear Chris saying this. Because I'm just going to...
Just getting ready.
I wanted to hear you say this.
Let me see if I can find it here. There's a chat somewhere, or are you in Skype?
I sent it to you there.
Oh, right. I see it. Right. I see. And I can just read it for the people who can't see the chat, and it says...
Yes, please.
Vi alle sammen unikke på hver vores måde, skabt i et øjebliks stille perfektion.
Okay, I'm not going to do it anything like that, but I'm going to try.
So that's and you can hear me actually tripping a little bit over the sounds because that's Danish for you. You stumble a lot in Danish, and I can only imagine the pains as a singer having to sing that.
Can you say it again?
Vi alle sammen unikke på hver vores måde, skabt i et øjebliks stille perfektion.
Perfection. The perfection is my favorite word.
Right. Yeah, it's very close. Yeah, no, I think you got this in the video. I mean, you say vi er alle sammen. You got that for sure. Unikke på hver vores. You have to probably add a little bit more D in måde. Like I think you.
Mod.
Right, måde. Yeah.
Mod, not mod.
Right, and more like måde. Yeah, it's this soft D, you know. It's right, måde, yeah. And
then the rest.
Skabt i et øjebliks stille.
Skabt i et øjebliks.
Yes, that's good. Stille perfektion.
Stille perfektion.
Yes, that's very good. If you can sing it like that, then
I can't.
I'm very impressed.
I would tell you already that I can't, but I'm gonna do my best. I don't know why I hear myself so low here. You do hear me all right?
Yeah, you're coming through fine.
The piano too?
Yeah.
Is the piano too loud for you?
No, I think it's fine.
In comparison to my voice? Okay, so I prepared for you and for your listeners a version. I'll begin with English, and then I'll sing a little bit in Danish. I'll try. And then a little bit in French. Second part, I begin with Guarani, which is a native Indian idiom spoken throughout South America. Then Arabic from Lebanon. The lyricist was from Lebanon. Then German. Ouch. Oof. You speak German too?
Yes.
It's always more frightening when you're singing to somebody who actually speaks the language.
Well, I don't know any of the other languages, so you'll be fine.
German, and then I sing a little bit in Spanish, a little bit in Portuguese, and then back to English. So just so if people are curious, those are the languages that I'll be singing in.
Sounds wonderful, and I'm really happy that this could be the first episode of the new season. I mean, what a spectacular way to begin.
Let me adjust the mic. The interesting thing when you are going to sing and you've been talking is that the voice sits in a bit of a different place. So let me readjust.
All right.
Here we go. This is Work of Art, global version. Just because I can't put it into words doesn't make me less worthy of your trust. Just because I seem to not make any sense doesn't mean my life is a big mess. Just because I fail to make you feel what I feel doesn't make my deals less real to me. Oh, I forgot. I was supposed to sing in Danish. Vi er alle sammen like på med vores småt. Skabt et øjeblik stille perfektion. I am a work of art. My ideals are real. Oh, French. Car mes rêves sont réels. Je mérite d'être vous. C'est pourquoi je le crois. Et je sais très bien que je ne ressemble à personne d'autre. 8대一起爱过往外把它的比还见我被安不到一样爱qua 만나 제를 콤비대 제 뺨벌이 위대 أنا قلبي ما بيدق بلح مين في جرمي I am a work of art. Ich will nicht leiden mehr. Alles verstehen, oh yeah. Lass mich gerne fühlen. Spür es tief in mir. Wie erklär ich's dir? Überall neue Türen. Cuando miro en el espejo, veo lo que veo. Aquí frente a frente sé que soy diferente. I am a work of art. Eu não quero sofrer pra depois entender o que é fácil de ver. And I know very well my original self is like nobody else. I am a work of art, a work of art, work of art, work of art.
Well done.
Thank you. I don't hear myself, which is kind of strange to sing when you're not hearing yourself. But if you heard me, that's fine.
I have a lot of questions related to the song, actually. The first one is it hard to convey a lot of emotions when you're singing a language that you don't speak at all?
Let me tell you a secret. As a songwriter, I do these maps that I visualize when I'm singing with a lot of imagery. So that's particularly useful when I'm singing in a language that I don't know, because that imagery is there. So maybe I'm thinking that I'm singing, at the top of a mountain, or I'm thinking that I'm jumping down the Grand Canyon and flying, or, so the use of imagery, particularly when you are singing in a language that you don't have any intimacy with, I think helps.
Right, because like when you sing, let's just say a word, every word has connotations. Like if you say the word beautiful, you immediately get a lot of images in your head. So I guess your technique is just you have the images, not the the word when you're speaking in, let's say, Armenian or whatever, those languages that are probably not on your learning list at the moment, but
right.
could come down the future.
Yeah, so it's a tool that as a singer, you can use and to sort of try to permeate the song with emotion, so that you're not just mechanically doing the sounds.
Right, because that would be my first sort of concern about doing it that way. But when you sing it, you don't really feel a difference between the English and the Armenian. And I'm sorry if any Armenians are listening. I'm not picking on your language for being obscure or anything. It's just the one of the more interesting ones. I particularly love the script, which I have no idea how anyone could read, but it looks fascinating.
Yeah, that's why when there's a website dedicated particularly to this project. It's called WOA, WOA, globalproject.com. And on it, I included all the lyrics of all the versions in Roman alphabet as well as in the original alphabets, because I too take great pleasure in looking at, these different letters and alphabets. So Armenian's very beautiful. Very beautiful.
And when you have to, I've seen you, there's a YouTube video of you doing this live as well, the multilingual version. I'm just wondering, is it not difficult to remember, again, words that you don't really, you don't know the meaning of the word? There might be an image associated with it, but how do you remember a song in that many foreign languages?
You have to study a lot.
Right.
Basically. Yes, you do have to study a lot. I do have the sort of training because as a musician, my hearing is, let's say, it's something that I've developed over the years. So the ability to have, audio memory is something that I'm trained at it. But to memorize the words of languages that I have no idea, I don't know the preposition, I don't know the nouns, I don't know, and just phonetically, it's something that requires a lot of practice.
All right. Well, if there are any aspiring musicians out there, there's work to be done.
There definitely is.
It's a wonderful way. I know a lot of people use songs in their language learning as well as a way to study the pronunciation, and I guess it's also. The work of art is a great example for people because they can listen to all of the versions, and they also have the translations and the original script, and
Yes, polyglot. Please make good use of it.
Yeah, it's really truly a polyglot song. It should almost be if we had a theme song, this would be it, I think.
Thank you.
I definitely nominate it if it ever came to a vote, but I'm not sure. We're not that organized, though. Not yet.
I'd appreciate it. But I have been quite involved with the polyglot community because of this. And just going back to one of the points that you mentioned about using music as a language learning tool, just wanted to give a little bit of my impression on it. I think music is an amazing additional tool for learning a language. Of course, you can't learn a language only through music. It's a tiny little part, but it's a very important part because it's fun.
Right.
So if you are able to find songs in a language that you love, because you love it, you're very, very likely to pay attention to the nuances and learn the lyrics and be singing all the time. You're going to be training your vocal apparatus in that language. So I think it's a very, very, very useful tool because it brings the love into the challenge that learning a language represents.
Definitely a challenge, and there's only one that I guess that's one of the few secrets is that there are no secrets. It's just hard work and you have to dedicate yourself, but you can make it fun through music, for instance.
Exactly.
I love the Russian Frozen. I listened to it a lot, the entire album actually, and every time I listen, it feels like I get just a little bit more because it's when you sing in Russian, it's very book-ish. It's kind of like reading very old novels because they have to fit it with the melody and all this, of course, but and. It was just so funny. One of the aha moments I had in Russian was I was listening to a Tato song, the old duo there, very controversial. But again, people who were probably following their own paths, how they felt like. And I just remember such a basic thing as word order. In Russian it's free because the ending indicated whether it's an object or a subject or whatever. And I was just like, wow, you can just put whatever word order you want, and it's still the same meaning. And when I first heard the song, I didn't understand the lyrics because that's an unusual word order for me. I would do it the other way around. So I was just like, I don't understand this at all. And then after studying a bit more, blah, 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 listening to it like 100 times, and I was like, wow, yeah, I guess you can just do it like that, huh?
Yeah, so see, you even got that. You even got a little bit further than just the sounds or maybe a word or two, but actually the language structure. So, and I think it's amazing because once you get it, right?
Right.
That piece of information, and you did it. The fact that you can do it through music, it's not something that gets repetitive because I don't know about you, but for me at least, when I love a song, I can listen to it hundreds of times.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I had this with work of art, actually.
As we know in language learning. Yeah, with which one? Oh, with work of art. Thank you. In language learning, it's very important. So music again is a very, very helpful tool because you can do the repetition without it getting tedious. It's fun every single time.
For sure. And right now I'm listening to a Scottish band called what are they called? Something like Dead Man Hell or something, and they made a song called Banging Your Drum or Bang on Your Drum, and it's just a really amazing song. So that's totally stuck on my YouTube now. Is play all the time.
Exactly, I'm exactly like that too. It's like I get stuck on a song and I get like highs from listening to the song. So,
Right.
Definitely it can be a good tool for language learning.
Yeah, I agree. So we've been talking a lot about music and improving our lives and all these things, but what about the sort of specific language learning challenges? Because I can imagine you must be very busy with all these creative explorations. How do you find time to learn any languages on the side? What kind of projects do you have in the next
Right now,
future?
in terms of learning languages, you mean projects in terms of language learning?
Yeah, well, improving or learning or writing songs
Yeah,
about them or anything
what
you
I'm
can think of.
what I'm doing right now is like I have it's it's interesting how like everything just sort of connects, but I'm becoming more and more of a minimalist in my life, meaning I have really, really reduced my number of possessions, material possessions, shoes, clothes, everything. And one of the things that I have been doing in this process, which was actually the most time consuming part, is getting rid of paper files. So I have tons of papers of language study. So what I'm actually doing is some of them I'm scanning them or, taking photographs and organizing. And that process itself, you look and you see the material and you remember the vocabulary. And the more important ones, like for example, interviews, how to give interviews in Japanese or whatever, if I'm trying to remember the words, I'm actually typing everything out so that
Wow.
I have no more paper and everything is digital in my computer, and I can just get my piano and my computer and my life is complete. So it's been an interesting way. So in the intent to become more of a minimalist and simplifying my life and having less material possessions, I've also sort of digitalized. I am in the process of digitalizing all my studies in languages, and even like I have hundreds or thousands of flashcards, and I found a website called cram.com with virtual flashcards. So I'm actually putting a lot of words in there too.
Wow, so you were actually writing flashcards by hand. That's very old school.
Yeah. I used to do that. Yeah, I'm 40, so I am old. I'm 41 actually. So I used to have that because I like the flipping thing that sort of helped me with vocabulary, and now I'm using digital flashcards, and just the process of retyping them out is helps to refresh my memory. So
Right. Do you ever get attracted to a language when you hear it like in a song, or you had to do something for work about it, or you're like, wow, I really want to learn this just based on how it
yes.
sounds?
Yes, I think it's one of the languages that it's the familiarity thing. Like I mentioned to you, I grew up in Brazil, in the state of Sao Paulo, where there's a huge Italian community. So Italian is definitely one of the languages that I want to learn. Someday I'd love to live in Italy for like 3 months and just learn a little bit, study a little bit, and become more familiar with it, because it's such an open language too. So for music, it's quite amazing.
Right, and it's also very emotional, and I guess that's why there are lots of I guess Italian is kind of known as the language of. I mean, it's kind of a bit like a language of love, isn't it? Connect with French, maybe a little bit. It's like a romantic language in more
very
more ways.
Romantic. Yeah, it's very, very romantic. I think the emotions are very outwards. I think the French are more cool, like it's more like a sexy type of love, and the Italians are more like, and it's something that I identify with. So that would be a nice, very, very nice project to be able to speak, average Italian, to have a conversation.
You can do it. You can do it.
Thank you.
Have the confidence. That's one of the first things you said today, was like something about, you need to have the confidence to step out of the comfort zone. And that is so true for language learning. If you start learning, let's say French or whatever, with the idea that you cannot learn a language, then guess what? You can't learn a language.
Yeah, I think that the thing with language learning to me is that I think we, and everybody, I'm sure that in the polyglot community is aware of this, is this whole feeling of being very vulnerable, right? I mean, as an adult, you have your ideas and your opinions, and you express them through language. And then you start a new language, and you're like, back to baby, you know? And you have to learn everything. So I think that to be able to stay vulnerable when learning a language is very important, because you have to almost be totally okay with making mistakes. You know, you have to almost like mistakes, because you know that they're part of this process. So
humility is that's a key word. I think you need to, I mean, you have to understand that before you sound cool, you're going to sound like an idiot, and that's just part of the process.
Exactly.
And the funny thing about the making mistakes part is that Benny told me once, or maybe it was in a video, I forget, but he said something like he was trying to make 200 mistakes a day. So he wasn't trying to avoid making mistakes. He was just saying, I need to make 200 mistakes today, then my day will be a success. And that kind of goes with like sales theory, which is a bit of a weird tangent, but like you, I found that language learning is it works with everything, like dieting, exercise, schoolwork, learning to play chess. I mean, everything is connected, it seems. And for the sales theory, you know, it's like if you call and you're really scared about a rejection, like if you're a cold calling salesman, guess what? You're never going to make a sale. But if you say, I heard of an office that did a competition of who could get to, 50 rejections first. And guess what? The sales of the office went up like 1,000%. So it's funny how everything is connected, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it goes back a little bit to what we were saying about, you know, being open to life. I think that this idea that we have to get things right is basically part of this consumer culture that we have to always look cool. But if you always look cool, guess what? You're not going to live your life because you're not going to take risks. You know, everybody looks stupid. Everybody makes mistakes, sometimes big mistakes. And it's not any different in language learning. But as you said, the process of learning can be applied in any area of your life. So that's the good thing about learning how to learn, and I think polyglots do that particularly well.
Yeah, and that's why it's generally a very lovely community to be part of, because they have such an open worldview that, you know, they have a positive attitude to everything. They don't complain about small things that don't really matter. It's, you know, it's a generalization obviously, but in general I feel like they're more open and they're more tolerant as well. And if everyone would just be slightly more tolerant, I think we'd have a way better world. But obviously now I'm dreaming a little bit.
I think I agree with you. I think that I think tolerance is everything. I mean, we don't have to agree, you know, we don't have to be best friends. But as long as, you know, you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing, and where our worlds meet, we can be respectful. You know, I think it's wonderful. And I think that the fact that the polyglot community has that characteristic, I think, like you said, we're generalizing a little bit, but the openness that being a polyglot requires technically already makes people a little bit kinder and more tolerant. So that's wonderful. I think it's a great thing that you guys, you know, are sending out to the world with this whole polyglot movement.
We're definitely doing our best, but you're not doing so bad yourself with the multilingual language versions, because as we talked about, language is the link. You know, if you don't have a common language, then you just, you know, you can't do anything. But if you have a message and it's translated into, I mean, you sung it in 19, but you had 22 versions, right? So that's a message that gets quite a reach, I would say. I haven't done the math, but it's probably more than half the world that can understand that.
It is, yeah. It is. It's billions and billions of people. I read that you speak Esperanto, right?
Yeah, I'm I would say upper beginner, maybe lower intermediate, but that's I guess that's a very similar course, really.
I love the whole concept of Esperanto. I think it's really, really, really great.
Right.
And unfortunately, it didn't really become, you know, a second world language, but you know, the whole idea is very beautiful.
Yeah, but then again, there is also a negative side to everyone speaking the same language. So, but if it could become everyone's second language, that could be cool.
Yes,
Right.
Absolutely.
I have
Absolutely.
a funny Esperanto story. Actually, I was gonna try and round this off, but whatever. The time is we've got time. I was at the Polyglot conference 2 weeks ago in New York, and we were at the final party at a rooftop place, amazing view over the skyline. And with me is one of my friends, Dennis, who speaks, I think, about 9 languages really well. And an American guy came up. Sorry, I don't remember his name. And he spoke a few languages and he seemed like a really talented learner from what I understood. And he asked Dennis, like, what language gave you the most out of all your languages you've learned? And Dennis is from Germany. It's not very common to speak more than 2, maybe 1.5, really. So he was like, what's the language that gave you the best experience? And he didn't hesitate for a second and said Esperanto. And the guy was like, what? Esperanto? A made-up language? You mean like Klingon? It's interesting. And then Dennis just went on and said, like, I've met people all over the world where we instantly connected just because we had a common language. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Can you imagine that? You're standing next to someone who speaks 9 natural languages, so you can speak to half the world, and he says that the constructed language, 100 years old and spoken by like 2 million people, gave him way better experiences. Speaks for Esperanto, really.
Yeah, because I think it's the whole concept beneath, the whole creation, underlying the whole creation of Esperanto, that I think, like you said, I mean, the people who do go out there to learn Esperanto already have that sort of mentality. So, but it is surprising that he would say that. It is because it's not spoken by millions of,
right,
people. I mean, like 2 million people, you said, so it's very, very small percentage of the global population. But I think that to be able to be in a community of people who are kind and who are wanting to communicate, because I think this goes back to something that I said previously. We are social beings, I'm a person, I tend to think of myself as a pretty introspective person. I avoid places with too many people. I'd always choose making my own food at home than going at a restaurant, because I just like the sanctuary that I can construct around myself when I'm more at peace. But and that's part of I am a work of art. I am more of an introspective person than, I hang out with 30 friends. It's not my thing. I'm very private in my personal life. But I do recognize that we are social beings. And I think that when you speak a language like Esperanto, which was meant to connect people, there's a beautiful, connection that you share with those people it goes way beyond the language. So
it's crazy, actually. It's really crazy, and I don't understand it myself, but that's exactly what it is. I've heard stories of people who learned Esperanto and they went on the Esperanto couchsurfing, which actually is the founder of the whole couchsurfing concept. And
I had no idea.
They had Esperanto couchsurfing 60 years ago. And
wow.
And they had like a register, in a paper format or something, and you had to call up people, use the phone book, back when we had phone books, and
no internet.
No internet, yeah. And so they would just show up, and it was like the stories people told was like we were invited like a part of the family, and there was no mention of any reciprocal actions or anything. It was just like they were just treated so well. And a famous, or maybe the most famous Esperanto YouTuber, Evil Dia, it's called Richard, from Australia. He talked about going to, I forget if it's Switzerland or Austria, but he went to an elderly couple, and they basically like, if a 5-star hotel has good service, they were like a 5-star hotel plus one. They were like serving him 3 meals a day, and they had like prepared routes for him to take through the city to see most of it in the shortest amount of time. They had like bikes ready for him, and a huge room with a view over a lake. And it was like all because he spoke Esperanto. Isn't that incredible?
It's amazing. Yeah, I think that when you are one of the things that I've noticed as a musician and also as a language lover is that when when we open ourselves up, like you said, it's the vulnerability. A lot of good things can happen. I mean, shit happens too, but basically you're able to encounter, like with work of art, I did not expect to be able to do the song in that many languages, but it just happened, because I said, I want to do this. Let me add to you that the people that I knew at the time from the music industry said it was crazy. When I launched the video, they said nobody is going to watch it. It's a waste of time for you to do that because it's an 8-minute video of a song that nobody's ever heard of before, spoken in 19 languages. You're not going to get 100 views on that. And I said, okay, that's fine. If I get 100 views, that's okay too. I'm willing to do it just because it's something that I'm wanting to open up. And that didn't happen at all. It was actually something that connected me to a lot of wonderful people, like yourself, like Benny, Lewis, because of that video. So, like you said, when you expose yourself to making the 200 mistakes a day, and you live life with that sort of attitude, a lot of good things, even like a 5-star hotel plus in Switzerland, can come into your experience. So I think that's nice. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and I just say I love that idea, and I really 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 hate like what do you call it, like negative, like people who don't believe. I don't know what to call them, but the most remarkable one I remember was a motivational speaker on YouTube called C.T. Fletcher. He's like a weightlifting guy, but again, everything's connected. And he's saying, when we send a guy to the moon, some idiot in some lab somewhere or scientist had to come up with the idea and believe that we could actually go to the moon. So I'm just like, okay, so if some guy can come up with the fact that we can build a car to go to the moon, you should probably just go with your gut instinct on whatever you want to go. And if you fail, you know what? That's just an excuse to get up and try again,
Exactly. I think that sort of is what I meant when I said, we don't need to ask people for permission, for reassurance. Just take the risks, and if you fail, you fail. I have failed so many times in my life, but the accumulated failures are a success in a way, because they've always led to some kind of learning and some kind of improvement and some kind of knowledge of the world, of life, and especially of myself. So I think that's kind of the spirit that I wish, more and more people could live life based on that. And I think for the people who don't believe, they have the right to say whatever they want, and it's our choice to listen or not to listen. I've heard, like, with work of art, that was one thing I literally heard that, it's a waste of time, don't do it. And it, it was actually, I got, special mention by the United Nations Alliance of Cooperation in the meeting, annual meeting that they had. It was actually one of the biggest things that I did in terms of recognition, because of what it represents to people. So it's not something, I think that people can say whatever they want, and we can choose to believe in what they say or not. No power drills.
No, but that's just cars. It's impossible to record. I need to build like a studio, like a phone booth studio or something, and just Jesus, drivers are terrible here. They're so rude. But was that, sir?
Did you hear any background noise from me?
No, not at all.
This mic is actually very good. The mic that I'm using. Yeah, because that's sort of how I dealt with the issue of background noise, because everything would get into my vlogs or interviews, and with this directional mic, I felt that I eliminated, I don't know, let's say 85% of the noise.
Right. Yeah. I'm thinking about getting one of those, or actually just a normal headset. They also have amazing noise reduction technology.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll definitely look into that. And I guess with what you just said about just doing it, just keep going. Something like another one of those funny things is like Michael Jordan didn't make the basketball team in school. It's like,
Oops.
yeah, the trainer must have been a little bit, probably made a mistake. And I think Walt Disney wasn't hired as a cartoonist or something. It's basically, there are lots of these stories, and I think there's a compilation on YouTube. If people are a little bit low on motivation, or they feel like they're not going anywhere, watch something like that, and it will really inspire you to the fact that as long as you never give up. And again, this is completely the same with language learning. The only way you can fail learning a language is by stop doing it. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think just going back to what you're saying about like Michael Jordan and Walt Disney, there's a great book that I really love called The Success Equation. It was actually written by somebody in the financial markets, but he actually says that there are professions where luck is more important than skills, and the other way around is also true. So there are things in life where you depend on skills. Like he said, for example, a tennis player has to be very, very skillful, or a chess player. Yeah. And then like winning the lottery is like luck. And then you have everything in between. And a lot of things in life, a lot of our professions will take us in between. So even if you don't become Michael Jordan and you don't become Walt Disney, it doesn't say anything about your value as well. I think that's another important aspect. I think that's why to me, it's very important to live life truthfully, because when you know that you've lived your life truthfully, right. and that's what matters. It yourself. You don't have maybe a trophy to show to the world, but you can look at yourself in the mirror and respect the person, and honor the person that you see. And that's something that only you can do for yourself. So I think that also the level of success we get in life is not necessarily a measure of our level of competence and skills, depending on the kind of professions that you choose. So the important thing is to live life and do it in a way that, when the moment of our final breath comes, which is going to come for everybody, you can go in peace, because you said, it was a life worth living. It was a life well lived, with all the ups and downs and the mistakes and the successes. So
yeah, and every day is a bit like that, I feel like, because when you go to bed haven't achieved what you wanted to achieve that day, you don't feel as good as when you can just sleep well knowing that you've done everything you could that day to progress towards your goals and towards your dreams. And what was the other thing? It's like hardworking people seem to get a lot more lucky than non-working people, right? That's at least what I've seen.
Because I think that when you work passionately, I wouldn't even say hard. I think when you work with your heart, not hard, but with your heart, nice. I think that you sort of have that positivity and that sort of energy that makes things progress. But at my age, I'm a lot older than you. I think that I've come to realize also that there are things that happen and things that don't happen, and so that's an art too, to be able to know, for example, if something doesn't work but you did everything, that also brings an incredible and strange sense of peace, because you're like, what, I did 110%. I did everything, absolutely everything that I could do towards it, whether it be, the goal of learning a language or a relationship or whatever. And I think that knowledge brings a certain level of peace, which radiates, good things into the world. That's kind of my...
Definitely. And what a wonderful way to end this first episode of the third season. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your story and message with the world. And I really appreciate it. And I'm a massive fan.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been a wonderful opportunity to speak to you. I loved reading about your story and the things that you share. So thanks a lot for the work that you do with actual fluency and just putting this polyglot community together. Thank you for all your listeners who have been here with us. And
thank you for listening to the Actual Fluency Podcast.
Peace.